Okay. Namaste, Hari Om. Welcome. Let's begin with the prayer. Kanaka and Ganeshan, please start the prayer. Everyone else, kindly mute. I'm going to mute now.
अन्तर्ज्योतिर्बहिर्ज्योतिः प्रत्यग्ज्योतिः परात्परा ज्योतिरेव ज्योतिः स्वयं ज्योति आत्मज्योति शिवोऽस्म्यहम्।
नारायण समारंभात् शंकराचार्य मध्यमाम् अस्मत् आचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् सदाशिवा समारंभात् शंकराचार्य मध्यमाम् अस्मत् आचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। नमस्ते।
Om Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gururdevo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om. Okay, very nice to have all of us here today. Warm welcome again. We are today discussing day 4 and day 5 talks of Tattva Bodha. The allocation is day 4. Ganeshan and Sajni will be summarizing day 4, summarizing their understanding. Kanaka and myself will be doing day 5, summarizing our understanding. So, can we go with day 4? Who would like to go first? Ganeshan or Sajni? How would you like to do? You're muted, Ganeshan.
Okay.
I think yeah.
You want me to start?
Yeah, please carry on.
Okay, please, Sajni. Make a good beginning for today's satsang.
Yeah, I've just had today I had my second jab, but I'm glad that everything's okay. I was wondering if I'd be able to join this or not, but all fine. So let's go on to day 4. Day 4 is Tattva Viveka, and this is really an inquiry into our essential nature, okay? Because the self alone is real. Everything else is mithya. And once we know this, this is really the foundation of Vedanta, Vedic knowledge. Now we must realize that change is constant. It's the only thing that is constant in the world, and everything keeps changing. Okay, so when something is changing, then we realize that the world is real. And what is it that sees that the world is real? And this is Satya, because that doesn't change. To realize only God, Atman, is real. Everything else is. Now, there is also something known as asatya, and asatya does not exist at all. Asatya is something like, if you think of a rabbit with horns, okay? So that doesn't exist, and we know it doesn't exist. Now, when we come to mithya, we need to know that it appears to exist for some, and it just appears. For instance, let's look at a dream. When we look at, we have a dream, and we dream that something wonderful has happened to us. Example, like winning a lottery. We experience it in a certain way. We see it in our dream, but when we wake up, that's all. So we know that this.
Sajni, your voice is breaking. Can you just
but what we really look at Let's look at another example. For instance, if we go to this, yeah, I'll bring it closer. Can you hear it now? Is it better? Is this better now?
Yes, yes.
It's
Even
better.
better.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you all hear me? Is it
We
better?
can hear
Because
you,
I'm on my
Sajni.
phone.
Yes,
I haven't
yes, we
taken my
can hear you.
laptop.
Yeah, we can
Okay,
hear you,
that's
Sajni.
great. So we were looking at what appears real but is not real. The other example is a mirage. In a desert, you think, you see the water, but when you go there, it's not there. It appeared to be real, but it's not real. So anything that appears like this and disappears like this is mithya, because we experience it to be real. Let's say experientially it's real, but factually it's not there. It's not there. It's unreal. So we need to know that anything like this, that even a dream, is something that has come up from our mind. See, it's the creation of the mind. And even our world, our waking world, is a creation of the mind, our five senses, our sense organs. That's what it is. So, keeping that in mind, we know that the only thing that is real, which is not changing, is existence, or call it Atma. Only Atma is real because there is no change. I exist, but it doesn't change. Now, with that understanding that the world is mithya, we need to know mithya and realize that the truth is only God. There are different stages. For instance, we are in the waking stage, we are in the dream stage, we are in the deep stage, sleep stage. But all these are mithya. The only thing that is real, everything other than the world, is I am, I exist. Everything else is mithya because it appears, it disappears, right? So what we have really looked at is satya, asatya, and mithya, right? Now, when we look at something that appears real, let's take the example of the snake and the rope. For sometimes we are afraid in the night if we see something and it appears like a snake. But as soon as we flash our torch onto it, we see it's nothing but a rope. The snake appears to be real. Okay, we need to use the word appears. It appears to be real, but it's not there. The reality is it's only a rope. So when we think of mithya, we need to think of mithya as a movie that is being projected. Sometimes we have 3D movies, but here it is 5D, the five senses, the body, mind, and the intellect. And that is mithya. So we realize that the world is really the five sense organs, at least what we think is the world. It is, we experience it all right, but we experience it through our five senses, through our mind, body, and intellect. For instance, if we think of a color, blue, red, anything, if we wear those tinted glasses, let's say blue tinted glasses, then the whole world will appear to be blue, if it's blue tinted, because it is the sense that it is the sense organ that is really creating all that. So when we look at the sense organs, we realize that our sense organs are limited. Okay, they are limited, and whatever we see through our five senses is not real. For instance, the example that is given is the elephant. If five blind people are trying to look, describe an elephant, then it is they who are creating their own world because of their perception. Okay, it can never be reality. What they are giving us is never reality. We have to realize that whatever we see is only our perception. It's not what is real. So therefore, there can be different people living in the same house, but they're not living in the same world because their perception is different. Everyone has a very different perception. Now, we need to go back to realize that I exist. This is the only Sat. Because the thing that does, everything else we said is changing, but what is not changing is I. The I never changes. And very often we get confused because we are confused between Satya, what is the real, and Mithya, which is the unreal. And we need to have a great, we need to demarcate those and have the sense of how different they are. When we look at Sat, it is Sat, Chit, Ananda, okay, which is existence, consciousness, and bliss. This is, we are living in reality. And that is freedom when we live in reality. However, most of the time we are living in illusion, in asat, and this is what brings about our suffering. So when we're looking at mithya, we also have to distinguish that it's not really false, because experientially we feel it is real. However, it keeps changing, and anything that changes cannot be the truth. It cannot be real. The I is the only thing which is real, and therefore we have to look at what the I is, and this I is the truth. Okay, this is something which is the true self, as against the false or the pseudo self, which is the body, the mind, intellect, and the five senses. So this is a gist of what is given in Day 4. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think you have covered practically everything. That which changes, that which is real, unreal, and then there is the one that is false. So Satya, Mithya, and Asatya, and all the three categories that you very clearly outlined. Wonderful, Sajni. Thank you so much for sharing your understanding. And you gave a lot of examples that are outlined in Day 4 talk, snake and rope, then the blueness of the sky, and then all the other examples. So wonderful sharing, wonderful understanding. Okay, we will go to Ganeshan, and then afterwards we can look at discussing Day 4 if there are any questions. In the meanwhile, rest of us, let us mute. Sajni, can you kindly mute? Go ahead, Ganeshan.
Namaste to everybody. Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me, Vasu?
Yes, yes, I was on mute.
Yeah. The Day 4 lecture was quite impressive on Tattva Viveka, and I would like to touch some key points. Sajani has already, gone into the full depth of the lectures. I would like to say some few important points. Prabhuji explained what is Upanayanam. Upanayanam means, actually I was not knowing very clearly what is the the crux of that Upanayanam. He says it is extra eyes, or eyes of wisdom. It is not the social function is being conducted. That's a different way. But the main spiritual significance of the Upanayanam is opening the eyes of wisdom. Then he told the Vedic literature, 90% of them is devoted to Karma Yoga, 6% is devoted to Upasana, and 4% is devoted to Jnana. And we are mostly talking about Jnana in these lectures, which are being conducted by him. Of course, the Satya and Mithya Mithya is a very interesting subject, and a lot of examples are quoted like snake and rope, mirage, and things like that. So this Mithya is such a subject. I mean, it is very difficult to comprehend it, possibly in the beginning of our life. As we go on collecting, I mean, going through different experiences in life, it becomes more and more clear, as it is a very subtle realization of the individual. See, we are operating through our senses. See, I will just quote Bhagavad Gita from Purushottama Yoga. Mame vancho jiva loka jiva bhuta sanatana hai manashashtani indriyani prakriti stani karshati. See, we are operating through the mind and the senses in the outside world. But behind it is the God principle. That is, I would say, Atma. So we are always completely engrossed in the sense objects, and we forget the core, the Atma principle or the God principle in that. Because the Mithya is such a thing that it takes you away from this Atma idea. Again, another sloka, see, Balastavat Krida Sakta hai, Tarunastavat Taruni Sakta hai, Vriddhastavat Chinta Sakta hai, Parame Brahmani Koi bhi nahi sakta hai. Means in never Kopi na sakta hai. So we get priorities in the beginning. When we are children, we play with the toys. Then as we grow, we become youngsters. Our priorities are different. Earning money, getting married, things like that. And at the fag end of our life, we start thinking. We spend too much of our burning our mental power in that direction. And nobody thinks about this Atma principle. To that extent, I will say we are all lucky. At least we are all talking about it in unison about that God principle. And thanks for providing this platform. And regarding Mithya, which is quite interesting, it is experientially real but factually unreal. So that's and depending upon our conditioning, mind and senses are operating under conditioned consciousness. And Prabhuji told a small story about an elephant. 5 blind men trying to describe an elephant. One fellow is touching the tail and he is telling that it is very small. Another person is touching the head. Oh, it is so big. And somebody is touching the tusk. Oh, it is a different feel. Everybody gets a different feel and they want describing it. So in a similar way, we see the situations in life depending upon our conditioned consciousness. We see things in our own way. So here, you see, then he talked about space and object. See, it's very difficult to. Space is everywhere. Atma also is everywhere, and then in the space, it's very difficult to. The moment the wall is broken, the space is there. So very difficult to. I mean, disassociate space and the object. Similarly, he says, if you are able to disassociate ourselves from the outer world and back to Atma, it is very fine, but it is not so easy. So he says, there only the Guru's, the Vedic literature steps in, the Guru steps in, and he becomes a beacon light to take us through the path of enlightenment. And as earlier she was telling, the self, which is very important, self and non-self he described, Atma and Anatma he described, and he told anything experienced is object, then experiences and experience, and subject and object, seer and seen, and then I, the big I and the small I, to come out of all these, I mean, the conditioned sense and things, jnana helps. And that jnana is given by the Guru. And that helps quite a lot to for our spiritual upliftment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ganeshan. Wonderful sharing, wonderful understanding. So wonderfully put, very aptly summarized. I think between you and Sajni, you have covered the whole talk. You also gave the initial introduction, which was not a part of the conversation that happened in day 4, which was not a part of Tattva Viveka, but still very, very important, because understanding these things, Upanayana and then Vedas, and I think chanting of Gayatri Mantra also came up in the discussion in the early first part. So a lot of good conversation. Thank you for sharing. Upanayana is very good. And you know, the eye of knowledge, the eye of wisdom. And then the mirage example, then also the rope and snake. I think between you and Sajni, you have covered all examples, and very nice. So before we go on to day 5 talk, are there any questions for Sajni and Ganeshan in terms of understanding or clarification? So, Kanaka, you're afraid to ask questions to you.
No, I just want to say,
You look at Sajni and ask.
no, it's not a question.
Yes, please. I'm joking.
Just about Nitya or Maya. This Maya, the paradox is Maya is something that does not exist, but it plays such an important role with things which exist. That's what I'm.
No, but Maya exists. It is not visible. It is unmanifest.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. We can't say Maya does not exist. It is. Anybody has anything to say about what Kanaka said? Sajni, Purnima?
Vasuji, Maya is unmanifest andre? I mean, what sense?
Maya is the power of Brahman. It is very difficult to say. See, if it gets manifest, it is already in the manifested world. The power of Brahman is in the unmanifest world. And Brahman and the power of Brahman, right? So Brahman is unmanifest. The moment it gets manifest, it becomes energy like Shakti, right? The power of Ishvara is Shakti.
Right.
So the power of Brahman, which is Maya, the creative power, it's still not yet in creation. It exists in the potential state.
In Brahman, it is potential state.
Yes, that's my understanding, and that's what I've also heard about from.
But in the relative world, you don't see its existence.
We see it as energy or Shakti, Shiva and Shakti, right? Yeah, as Shakti.
What about in deep sleep state?
That is the different. I think it will get into a spin. I think I'm also trying to learn about deep sleep state. Still, I would not be. We can probably ask that question back to Prabhuji. Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, Vasuji, can I ask you something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, see.
You can ask everyone.
Yeah.
Kanaka, Sajni, Purnima, yourself, me.
Yourself, I remove it. So now I am asking, I would like to ask you, normally, they say snake and rope, and then mirage and all that are quoted for Vasana, for this Maya concept. I would like to, anybody can tell more practical examples, no? Like an incidents or life happenings, which may describe this Maya concept better.
Yeah, life is full of that, right? What more practical? Take COVID, for example. Isn't it Maya? To whom is COVID there? To the body.
Okay.
To the Atman, is it there? Huh? Okay, you suppose we get angry. To whom is anger there? Only to the mind, no? All right. the effect is, and that changes. Is anger constant or is happy? Are you angry 24 hours in a day?
Hmm.
You get angry, within 1 or 2 minutes you recover. Okay, circumstances, to certain circumstances we will react. Sometimes we are happy, we are joyful also. How long will joy stay? So what is the learning from this? Anything that happens to the body and mind, anything that is in the world impacts the body and mind, and it is mithya. Mithya means what? It comes and goes. What other example? You can count, keep on counting on your fingers, you'll get hundreds of examples. You taste the food, you taste it. Is it constant? Next time when you taste that food in some other house or in your own house, you will remember the old food, the
But
previous day.
Vasuji, that type of awakening,
Mm.
it is a little bit at a mundane level.
No,
But
the question is, as we keep progressing, the yardstick is this. Even in the teaching of Tattva Bodha, Prabhuji is saying that as we progress, we will get established more and more in equanimity. Still, vasanas will keep coming up and we will react. Question is now, if we are more advanced in the beginning, as we advance, our reaction, the time with which we stay in the reactive state will reduce. But then that is still relative. It keeps coming up, and what is the solution that is given? No
see,
other solution.
yeah.
Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa. Because we know that this is mithya, world is mithya, but our old vasanas keep coming up and we keep reacting. Our reaction is because of our previous vasanas.
See, Maya also provides a platform for experiencing, and which also leads to higher blossoming of consciousness, isn't it?
Maya is a big subject. Now, if you can take Satya and Mithya, okay, we can actually pay attention to this, because in different ways Mithya is being described. Experientially real, factually unreal. That itself is a good way to approach. We experience a lot of things, and we take that experience as reality. If you look at the teaching in day 5, Prabhuji does not go to the shloka directly. He addresses all the blocks in recognizing Atma. And only in the last 10-15 minutes, he addresses what is Atma, what is not Atma, in terms of the first of the things. In terms of the three bodies, only the first of the gross body only. I am not the gross body. Why we are not the gross body is addressed. So there is a whole lot of background to it. And the good news is we are all in it and we are at it. We are in Atmajnana. We are constantly striking in Atmajnana. So these questions will come up, and these questions should come up because of our inertia. And the wonderful example Prabhuji gives is in other teachings is, you are driving a vehicle, even if you apply brakes, the vehicle will stop after a certain distance. So we now understand we are Atma, okay, and the world is Mithya. We are Satya. I mean, I as consciousness is Satya, but as body and the world is Mithya. But still, many times we act as though we are the body and mind. We give reality to body, and that is because of inertia. And that inertia will go. We have to constantly, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa should happen, and that inertia will reduce. Today, Today, the vehicle may stop after 500 meters after we apply brakes. Tomorrow, the vehicle may stop after 300 meters. Very soon, when we are established in that state of Atmajnana, then things will be very much, in full conscious action.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
That is my understanding. Of course, this is a good question. What we will do is we'll post it back in the group for Prabhuji to also throw light on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sajni, do you want to say anything?
No,
You are
no,
on mute.
You have explained it so well, and we will ask Prabhuji, as you said, on the group.
Thank you. Kanaka, would you like to do day 5?
Okay. Namaste to all the Atmajatis. Now we are all in the path of self-realization, aiming for a blissful life and finally liberation. We know intellectually that we have to pay attention, be aware of, and recognize what is there deep within us. But in the relative world, we pay attention to objects. And running after them, we find pleasures and we think that is happiness. And we are satisfied temporarily. But Vedanta teaches us that happiness or bliss can be found through knowledge. And there are 2 types of knowledge. One, worldly knowledge, where the knowledge comes first and then we have experience. Like we have to go to a place, we have the map or the address, we have the knowledge, and then we experience it. But the second one, that is self-knowledge, self-knowledge, we have the experience first and then gain the knowledge. The Atmajnana helps us to experience Brahman, and then we gain the knowledge of our true divine nature, inner nature. Then Prabhuji talks about the concept of God. That we, right from birth and throughout our childhood, we have a concept that God is somewhere far away, all powerful, all knowing, and He's too far to be reached. And He's controlling everything. Whereas I am so small, so meek, and so much is the distance between us. This is mainly because of the influence of the society and religion. But later, with experience, the concepts do change a little bit. But Vedanta gives the correct concept that God is omnipresent. And God is described as Sat, that is existence. This is the main key point. And this Sat appears in different forms, various forms. Chit is the knowing principle, that is consciousness of all these various forms. So then we next come to Ananda. We search for Ananda, bliss, but fail to get it all the time and to our satisfaction because of certain conditioning, which is called upadhis. Now, just as water, when some color is added to it or some mud is added to it, it has a different appearance. And that is because of the condition that we have added. Similarly, Atma also is, we are not able to see Atma in its true form because of conditioning, that is name and form, and also experiences. Now, just as when these conditions are removed, then we see Atma in the true form. And just otherwise, what happens? We start feeling that the Atma in me is different, the Atma in you is different, the Atma in him is different. Just as the space in different rooms. Whereas all the space is one, existence is one. Nothing can be removed from space and nothing can be removed from existence. Vedanta shows a systematic logical process called prakriyas to understand the correct meaning of subject and object. Now next we go to the Sharira Traya Prakrya. Prakriya. Now the first, we have three bodies, gross, subtle and causal. The first one, gross body, that is the Sthula Sharira. It is made up of the 5 elements and predominantly earth. The elements are earth, fire, water, air and space, starting from the grossest to the subtlest. And we are all very fortunate to have had a human birth. Now, to have a human birth, the cause is the punya karmas, the good merits that the actions of the meritorious actions that you have done in the past. Now, because of these good karmas, you get a human birth. And the coming to the gross body as such, it keeps changing right from birth to death. There are so many changes and it is continuously changing. But the one who witnesses these changes is unchanging. The unchanging I, which is seeing all the changes, is the subject. It is Nitya, Satya and Chaitanya. Whereas the body, which is the object, it is Anitya, Mithya and Jada. So this is a very big contrast between the subject and the object. Unchanging, subject unchanging and the object always changing. So these are the 4 logical points which helps us to have a clear picture about the subject and object. So with this I conclude. Thank you.
So wonderful, excellent. Actually, you have summarized it very well. Nitya, Satya, and then Chetana for the subject, consciousness, and then Anitya, Jada, and then Anatma for the objects. So how to separate out the gross body, and then what subject-object relationship, then what we see in the world as Mithya, all of that beautifully summarized in your understanding of Talk 5. Anything anyone would like to add or ask questions to Kanaka?
Well, the body and mind, do you call them Jada as such?
Yes, they are Jada. For Kanaka, you should answer that.
Because they change and they come under that category of objects. So object study.
Correct.
So it is considered as Jada.
So the distinction made is whether all are objects. The question is, your question is, you will not have doubt about the gross objects. Your question is whether mind is Jada or Chetana, because
Yeah,
mind
that's it.
can think, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it is a subtle object still
Mm.
because of one distinction. Sajni, would you like to say something on this? Go ahead. All right. So, on from the subtle, from the object perspective, mind is still an object because by itself it is not conscious. It derives consciousness from the witness or the sakshi. Okay. If 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 the reflection of consciousness doesn't happen in the intellect, mind is inert. Mind gets its knowing ability or emotional ability from the source, which is Atman. It's just like the moon reflecting its light, but it doesn't contain its own light. But the light of the moon is very, very soft, gentle, very nice, very soothing. But it is derived light from the sun. It is reflected light from the sun. So if the sunlight does not fall on the moon, then moon becomes Jada. It won't be in a position to reflect its light. Similarly, if Atma doesn't reflect itself in the mind, then it means the mind, what happens at death, not only the body, but the mind also goes away. Right? It goes into another one. A subtle mind goes and then tries to recombine with the universal mind. So,
But you can recognize it as a living principle. I don't know how do you term
it is a subtle object.
Mm.
It is a subtle object. It is relatively a subject. Mind becomes a subject when it is seeing an object through the sense organs. But mind becomes an object when the intellect is able to see, oh, I am angry, I am disturbed, I am happy. So the one who is saying I am happy is not the mind. It is the one who is witnessing the mind. Okay, so my eyes can see, it is blurred. That is the mind seeing as a seer of the sense organs. When you compare sense organs and the mind is the seer and the sense organs are the seen or object. If you compare the sense organs and the objects of the world, okay, for example, laptop and eyes, then laptop is the object, eyes are the subject. Now, if we compare eyes and the mind, the eyes become the object, the mind becomes the subject. Now, go one step further, compare the mind with the witness becomes the subject, and the mind becomes the object. Now, can we go behind the witness, prior to the witness? No, it ends there. So the witness is the absolute subject.
Yeah, this is something like what is coming in the Keno Upanishad, no? Eye of the eye, ear of the ear, like that.
Yeah.
And as Sajini had stated, that besides consciousness, all other things you can is anatma and comes under the category of object.
Yeah, at the first level, yes, true.
That's the basic.
Yes. Very nice, wonderful. I will just share my screen. Let me know if you're able to see. I just put together the slide. Are you able to see?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Shall we mute?
Ha.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So I'm just I just put together these from day 4 and day 5, and I must make a disclaimer here that this is according to my understanding of the day 4 and day 5 talk. And at the very outset, I would like to pay my humble pranams to Adi Shankara and Sadashiva from the source as we prayed, and then Adi Shankara who has given us the Tattva Bodha, and then from Adi Shankara all the lineage, and then now to Prabhuji who has given us the talks on Tattva Bodha, and also the Tattva Bodha itself, the truth that is pointed out in Tattva Bodha. So with that humble pranams, I would like to share my understanding of day 4 and day 5. So this prayers we have already gone through. I just put it together for, sorry, I did not put it up when the chant was happening. I should have done that. Now, day 4 begins with one truth that is pointed out in Tattva Bodha. It is called Tattva Viveka. Tattva Viveka outlines Tattva Vivekaha Kaha. What is Tattva Viveka? It is Atma Satyam Tadanyat Mityeti. Atma alone is real. Everything else is unreal. Okay. And there are definitions that all of us have seen: Satya, Asatya, and Mithya. And now the word Mithya is, it appears to exist for some time, but not all the time. Isn't it? It appears to exist for some time, but not all the time. That appearance is called Mithya, and it is unreal. So here the distinction or the terminology used in the teaching of day 4 is real is Satya, and false, the terminology false is Asatya, that which does not exist. Real is that which is not subjected to time and space. That means it is available always and it does not change. Time means it is always available. Second, it does not change. All right, that is the classical understanding of reality or Satya. False is that which does not exist at all. And the example given in the teaching is the horns of a rabbit. If somebody says, I saw 2 horns in the rabbit, we know it does not exist. It is false. So that is obvious. Now, the third category is interesting, like Ganeshan and Sajni pointed out and dealt in detail, that is Mithya. It appears to exist for some time. There is a temporary reality to what exists. And there are umpteen number of examples. Every object in the world falls under Mithya because it exists for some time and goes away, or it keeps on changing. Anything in the world, the only thing that is constant in the world is change. Everything keeps changing. So in that context, every object is Mithya. Then subtle object, which is our emotions, thoughts, feelings, and emotions, that also becomes Mithya because it appears and disappears. It keeps changing. Where? In our mind. So while objects keep changing in the external world, the gross objects, the subtle objects, which are our feelings and emotions, keep changing and appear and disappear in our mind. So that also is Mithya according to the classical definition. Now, what happens here? Okay. So we will go with this classic definition of Mithya, and as Sajni pointed out, even as Ganeshan pointed out, Mithya is factually real, factually unreal, but experientially real. Like we experience, in our experience, we see the water in the mirage, but when we go closer, there is no water, right? Similar to our sunrise and sunset, we experience sunrise and sunset. Experientially, it is real. Every morning, 6:15, 6:20, we have golden orange sun rising, and every evening, in the evening, we see the sun setting. But factually, is it real? No, we know that sun neither rises nor sets. Okay, that is the first definition. So mirage, dream, rope, and snake, all that is there. Then the next example that is given is the appearance of the world. Why is the world unreal? In the Avastatraya, in the three states, in the world appears when we wake up. That is called the waking world. The dream world is different from the waking world. We already see a change. And in deep sleep, there is neither the body nor the world experientially. When we go into deep sleep, there is complete blankness. So it keeps changing. Therefore, the world is unreal. Unreal means it is mithya and it is continuously changing. So what is, like what Kanaka said, what is real then? What is constant in all the three states, which is Turiya or Atma, that is real. Okay, that is the example that is given. Now, the same Tattva Viveka in another example for Mithya is, how does the world appear? The world appears because of two reasons, perception and projection, isn't it? Perception is from the sense organs, the five sense organs. We receive inputs, we perceive inputs from the sense organs, and then the mind interprets what it is, gives it a label. Oh, this is a flower, this is a rose, and this is a red rose. So the waking world is a creation of perception of the five senses and projection. By projection, the mind interprets the information given by the sense organs and labels it, and decides, oh, this is a rose, this is coffee, this is tea, this is a table, this is brown, this is red. So the waking world appears because of perception and projection. But the main thing is, our senses are limited. The senses are limited, and they give a partial view of what is seen, heard, tasted, smelt, or touched. Okay, and where do these senses provide the inputs? To the mind. And the mind takes a decision or makes an interpretation based on the inputs received from the sense organs. And as Sajni put it, when we see the world through colored glasses, we see the world as colored. So the limitation of the senses is that the senses itself is limited. So the mind, thinking that what the senses has provided is real, interprets the world as real, and that is the problem. So it is actually unreal or mithya. Any decision that is taken on the perception of sense organs has to be mithya, because what is the example given? Some animals can have better eyesight than human beings. Some animals have better hearing ability than human beings. The bats can hear ultrasounds, and the dogs can see beyond the range of the human sight, the Vibgaya or colors. That is why they can see in the night. Many animals can do that. Therefore, the other example given is, suppose we by some stroke of luck, we develop X-ray vision, then what do we see? Instead of seeing the body, we will see only bones, isn't it? So as we sharpen our eyesight or these sense organs, our view of the world or the reality of the world, our absorption of the world, nature of the world changes. So we cannot rely on the sense organs or the mind to convey the truth about the world. So that is why the world is Nitya. What about the dream world? Dream world is entirely the creation of the mind. Okay. And it's entirely the projection. That means whatever is stored in the memory, it gets projected in the mind in the dream. It's like winning a lottery in a dream. When we get up, we know that 1 crore is a fictitious money. We can do nothing about the 1 crore that we won in the dream lottery. All right. Then the next thing is, there is the other thing about Nitya is, okay, this is the same thing. It's got to repeat. Sorry about it. The next thing about Nitya is, it is Nitya because it is distorted. Who distorts it? The senses provide inputs to the boss, and the boss is the mind. And mind interprets the information based on the senses and makes a decision. Oh, this is red, this is... So it may not be, to a colorblind person, even the red will appear gray. So we cannot really rely on the sense organs and the mind to interpret. So whatever view that we see of the world, even with the best of the sense organs we have, it is distorted. That means it is not as real as it appears in our mind. That is the definition of distortion. Okay. So because it is distorted, so the question here is, in the teaching of day 4, what is asked is, what is real out there? Out there means out in the world. And like Ganeshan said, and even Sajni said, it's like blind men describing the elephant, each one giving their view, isn't it? Or look at the other interpretation that the mind does about the sky. The mind says the sky is blue, but if we go near, we know the sky is not blue. It is only appearing blue. That we know. But the mind, whenever we ask, we automatically say the sky is blue. That is because the mind is interpreting the sky as blue based on the sensory inputs it receives. So the world is Mithya because of the distortion. Distortion by whom? Not distortion by the world. It is distortion by the sense organs and the mind. Okay? And in all this, what can be said about the world? We cannot say the rose is red because it may not be red. We cannot say the sky is blue because the sky may be blue, may not be blue. We are relying on the senses and the mind to know the reality. So what can be said about the world actually? What can be said about the world?
It is unreal.
It appears, or we can just say the world, two people living in the same house do experience the same object differently. That's what Sajni also outlined, right? So if we take an object, we'll say, oh, that is very nice, beautiful. Somebody else might say, oh, it is ugly. I don't like that color is gaudy. Okay. So we experience the same object differently. So we cannot even say that is nice, that is not nice, this is correct, that is incorrect. What can be said about the world? We can't say the world is real, obviously, because of all these logical reasons that are given. The only thing that we can say about the world, according to Vedanta, is anything that we try to say definite about the world becomes mithya, unreal. If we say this is a coffee cup, no, it becomes mithya, because coffee cup is an appearance. It is a glass or a porcelain, right? If we say it's a glass or a porcelain, even that becomes mithya. So what can be said about a cup or about the world? We can only say that it exists, isn't it? That is what the day 4 teaching is pointing out to. When it comes to objects, we can only say it exists. We can't say it is glass, it is, you can't, any attribute we put, of course, not in the transactional world. In the transactional world, we have to communicate with the convention of language. We have to say it's a coffee cup. But then in terms of understanding it from the Vedanta perspective, knowing the reality of that, we can only say the object exists. Existence is the nature of the world. Brahman reflects in the world as existence. So we can say it exists. That is the only sure thing we can say about the world. It is blue, it is red, it is nice, it is heavy, all those becomes, it is glass, it is metal, it is iron, it is aluminium. All that becomes a mithya or an unrealistic statement from the understanding of reality perspective. Conventionally, for transactional purposes, that is the convention, we have to continue with it. Okay, here we have to differentiate between transaction and understanding of reality. So in terms of understanding mithya, we cannot say the world does not exist. When we say the world is unreal, what we can say positively is it exists only, because existence is at the base of every object in the world, isn't it? The cup exists, the tree exists, the laptop exists, all right. Anything else, okay? The stove exists, the gas cylinder exists. So the common thing about everything in the world is existence. So that is the thing. That is the common factor. Now, what is the... So the next thing is, all of the discussion so far has been on mithya. Okay, we cannot say anything specific. So all that we can say is it exists. That is the reality of all objects. Otherwise, everything is an appearance. Anything we try to define in terms of appearance becomes unreal. Therefore, we can say it is mithya. Okay, we can only say it exists. So what have we done so far? Atma satya tadanyat satyan tadanyat mithyeti. So we have dealt with the second part only, mithya part, which is here. Can you see this? The mithya part. Now the teaching goes back to deal with the Atma Satya part. Atma Satyas, the Satya, Atma Satya Tadanyat Mithyeti. Okay, so Atma Satya is the actual reality part. What can be said about Satya? It can be said that Satya is I am, where I is consciousness, I am is existence. And this I am cannot be separated from each other. They go hand in hand. And what is the logic used? I exist and I know that I exist. We cannot say I exist and I don't know I exist. Or we cannot say I know, but I don't exist. So these cannot be logically stated, isn't it? When I exist, I know I exist. And when I know I exist, I actually exist also. So Sat and Chit go hand in hand. That is the logic used. We cannot separate Sat and Chit, consciousness and existence. When we say I am, the I in the I am statement points to consciousness, and am in the I am statement points to existence. Right? So this is the teaching that is being said. Now, when we understand this, what is the actual benefit of Tattva Viveka? Tattva Viveka means, the Tattva Viveka here is saying Atma alone is real, everything else is unreal or mithya. It's not saying it is false, it is mithya. It appears to be real for some time, but not all the time. Why should we understand this? And day 4 teaching, in the day 4 teaching, eventually there's a wonderful statement given in the teaching at the end of the talk of day 4. The benefit of Tattva Viveka. Why should we understand this as Tattva, the reality of this, in this way, as expounded in Vedanta? Why should we understand it that way? What is the benefit? Any input? Would you like to share? Anybody?
To establish ourselves in our inner strength. That's what I feel.
Okay. To establish, please repeat, Ganeshan. To establish?
To establish ourselves in our inner strength.
In our inner strength, yes. Wonderful. That's what you said. Wonderful. In the
That's all I know.
Sajni, Kanaka. We know only I is real, I am is real, but the world or everything else is unreal. Unreal means it comes and goes. So what is the benefit of such an understanding?
Once we know this, then we're not attracted to all these objects of the world. And we can distinguish. We know we need the pseudo self. We need to interact, with people around. This is body, mind, intellect. But we know the real self is the Atma. That is what it is. And once we have this very clear, then we are not running after what is unreal in the world.
Wonderful. We don't run after unreality, but what impact that does it have when we don't run after unreality? What impact does it have in our life? That is what is outlined there. Wonderful.
We can differentiate between the experiencer and the experienced.
That is the Satya Mithya Viveka. That is the Viveka part. But you're saying, why should we do it?
Because we enter the area of Ananda.
No. Directly, yes, Ananda is right. But when I think you have said it right, Kanaka has said it right, even Sajni brought out a beautiful point that we don't chase unreal things in life, but it has a direct impact on our life, day-to-day life. Okay, here is the clue. I know in spite of everything that changes around me, I am nothing happens to me. I am just a witness of all the changes.
No. Chitta Pragya.
No. When I am the witness of all the changes, what is the effect? I'm looking for the answer outlined in the teaching.
Okay.
We
This
are
is a clue.
unaffected by
Correct.
unaffected by any adverse things that happen.
Unaffected means what happens. Correct.
We are
Absolutely right.
totally stable. We know what is real, what is
Ah,
unreal.
It will
so,
not affect I.
so suffering ceases.
Suffering.
Oh.
Yeah.
I am the witness of all changes. Okay. Including illness, including we know, and when this gets established clearly in us, okay, initially we understand, but due to vasanas things will come up again and again. But as we clearly progress, okay, we know nothing happens to I. All that happens is where to the gross objects and subtle objects. Gross objects is external, subtle objects is mind and intellect. Okay, it happens, but I am not the even the gross or the subtle objects. I am the witness, and nothing happens to the witness. I
wish we remembered this all the time.
No, this is there in the day 4 talk. It is towards the end. This is the biggest benefit. I mean, this is the biggest contribution of Vedanta. Why should we know? This is always a question. What is the practical utility of Tattva Viveka or Vedanta? This question keeps coming up again and again in most spiritual forums and talks. Now, if we do not understand that we are the pure witness, we will suffer because we identify with the body or we identify with the mind. And when the body changes, we also keep changing and suffering.
But to sustain the witness, we are taking all the things from the Nitya world.
Yes. So there are two things. One is we have to, transactional purposes, we need to do our roles. We need to perform our roles in the world. So do it. But as we do it, understand that I am the witness. Consider that I am is playing the role of Ganeshan. I am is playing the role of husband. I am as a householder. I must use the body and mind to go to KEB office to pay electricity bill. I must go and contact the plumber when there is a leak. But behind it, I is a witness. So that understanding is there. If there is a drain leak, we have to get it repaired. When we are hungry, because get hungry, we have to cook food and eat. But craving will stop because we understand that the food is required to maintain the body. Isn't it? This does not negate the responsibility or the roles, rather, that we have to play in the world. We have to pay telephone bill, otherwise telephone connection will get cut. Airtel or BSNL or any bill, right? So if they cut off, then you will not get disturbed because you know that you are the witness. But if we identify with the body, then we will get disturbed. So suffering ceases when I stand as a witness. And because I know nothing happens to I, everything happens to the body and mind. So this is the benefit of Satya Mithya, or in Tattva Bodha, this is called Tattva Viveka. Distinction between Satya and Mithya is called Tattva Viveka. And what is the distinction? Atma alone is real. Atma Satya 8.2 that is there in the slide. Atma Satya Tadanyat Mityeti. Everything else, anyat, tadanyat, thereafter everything else, mityeti, is mitya. So the only reality is Atma, or the witness. And this is the clear benefit, the biggest benefit, and this is the only benefit that we need to seek. If we try to reduce suffering by action in the world, temporarily we will be able to elevate, but we will not be able to solve. It's like a first aid. Like Ganeshan ji said, this involves constant Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa, because vasanas will come up again and again. But when we are at it, we will see the benefit. Okay, this is the summary of day 4 talk that, as I understood. Would you have any questions? Now, day 5 talk relates to Atma, Anatma, Viveka. And the question is Atma Kim? Who is Atma, or what is Atma? And the definition is given in the next stanza, shloka. Sthula Sukshma Karana Sharira Dvaya Atiriktaha. That means it's beyond Sthula Atiriktaha, beyond Sthula Sukshma Karana Sharira. The 3 bodies, Panchakoshatitaha, beyond the 5 sheets. Avastatraya Sakshi, that the witness, Sakshi is the witness, Avastatraya, the witness of the 3 states, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Satchidananda Rupaha, Sun, and along with it, Yat Tishtati Saha Atma. This is Atma. Now, the teaching, the beauty of the teaching of day 5 is, the teaching does not directly go here. And this is what it starts one step back. Have you noticed? Kanaka, have you noticed, since you have looked into day 5 talk? Of course, all of us would have looked into both the days. The effect of the 3 bodies is told only in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the talk. The first 50 to 55 minutes, the teaching concentrates on one thing. What is the difficulty in recognizing Atma? The bottlenecks of recognizing Atma. Only then we can go into the definition of what is Atma. Have you seen that? And where is the teaching starting? And Vedanta always starts with where we are, actually, where we are at this present moment. And like we discussed, it starts with God, idea of God in religion, and the truth or the statement made about God in Vedanta. And very clearly, very nicely, Kanaka put it. God in religion is, God is a superpower. He is invisible. He is controlling the entire world. He is in Vaikuntha or Kailasa or heaven. He is not visible to us. He is not available to us. This is what religion is saying. But what is Vedanta saying? If the definition of God is omnipresent, then he, she, or it must be present in everything and everyone. Isn't it?
Yeah, and that is just contradictory to that it's easily available.
It is easily available.
It's not
Correct.
available, and here
Yes.
it's easily available.
So, and what is the logic used? How is religion reinforced in our day-to-day life? There are 2 wonderful examples given. How is it reinforced? This concept of God, all-powerful, somewhere else, and I am meek, all those definition is there. I am here, God is somewhere else. in our day-to-day action, we reinforce this. We means not as we go in a common man, as common man. I have also done it in the past till I came to the tutelage of Vedanta under Prabhuji. There are two wonderful examples given.
One is that about the puja room and then the temple.
Correct. Wonderful. What does puja room indicate?
That God is only present there.
But what impact in life?
That God is
Day-to-day life.
separate from me. God is separate from me.
Separate. But then I can be clean and pious only when I pray for 10 minutes. The other 23 hours,
Do what
50
they want.
minutes, I can do whatever I want.
No, that 10 minutes gets extrapolated into the other hours, waking hours, and whatever it is.
Correct. If you do it correctly.
Yeah.
Why do you think people go and put gold and money into the hundis?
I don't know. We have to ask them.
No, it's something in return, no, because it's not, that prayer is not integrated.
At least, Vasuji, at least for 10 minutes you are, praying.
Yes.
That way, yeah.
Correct. So, see, again, Vedanta is not saying don't pray.
Yeah.
Vedanta is saying don't have the wrong idea that God, you can do anything, absolve yourself, you can do anything outside of 10 minutes.
We have to use it as a means, that's all.
And it is a limited thing. It is required, or it is useful in the beginning stages where somebody needs an anchor.
Like a ladder.
Once you are in Jnana Yoga, or not Jnana Yoga, Atma Vichara or Vedantic self-inquiry, then you have to realize, don't see what happens if we stick to the concept of religion. We bring that same concept of God into Vedantic self-inquiry also. Okay, so we have to drop that when we take self-inquiry. Why? Because only then we will have a paradigm shift, we'll change our understanding of God. God is not only in the temple, not only in puja room, okay, and he is there in everything and everyone. All right, I'll tell you one typical example. There is our friend who feeds stray dogs. Okay. The stray dogs sometimes get very wild. And once, it bit Divya while she was coming home, my daughter. So we tell them, okay, feeding stray dogs is fine. But then, stray dogs are meant, you have to be careful. If you feed, you have to take care, you have to give them anti-rabies injection, everything. All right. So it is a partial concept. See, the concept in a certain religion is we have to be compassionate to animals, isn't it? But then we forget the safety of humans. Isn't it? So again, going to a temple, okay, I go every Monday or Thursday and Saturday. Okay, it is good, but it only enhances the separation between God and me. Okay, but on the Vedantic side, self-inquiry, we say God is omnipresent, present everywhere. That means it's present, everything everywhere means what should happen here? What should happen here?
It should be present.
From God being a superpower, the Vedanta changes the understanding. It doesn't change the definition.
Yeah.
It tries to bring in the understanding that God is present
As exists.
Existence, consciousness, and bliss, instead of being present as a superpower, controller of our destiny, like that. Okay, so this shift in understanding must come as we engage in Atma Anatma Viveka. Okay, now before we engage in that, first we have to understand what is the truth about God that Vedanta is saying. This is not a concept that Vedanta is putting. The very fact that everybody, including all religions, agree that God is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, right? Now, omnipresent, the way religion defines God as superpower in heaven, invisible, and very difficult to reach, is contrary or opposite to the definition of omnipresence of God. Both don't go hand in hand. So Vedanta is correcting that gap, saying, no, if God is omnipresent, God must be present in everything and everyone. But he is not present in the way religion defines it as superpower. God is present as Sat, Chit, Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. And I am bliss. Okay, and there is wonderful thing about existence. The forms can change, but existence does not change. There is no gap in existence. This one is clear, isn't it? The forms can change. Now, there is a mobile phone, okay, and then we can say the mobile exists. And then there is a laptop. We are viewing this conference with the laptop. We can say laptop exists, but in between the mobile and the laptop, there is space. There is nothing that exists. No, space exists, right? So there is existence embedded in at the ground of mobile, one object, and there is space existing at the ground of the laptop or another object. In between, the existence exists as space. So existence, there is no gap at all, right? So then all of this is prior to what is Atma. This is all giving a background, and this I won't get into it. Two types of knowledge. Getting something that we do not have or do not know is worldly knowledge, and then self-knowledge is recognizing that we already have. And there is a fundamental difference here in self-knowledge. Because Vedanta is trying to help us recognize what we already have, we do not lose it. There is no fear of losing. But in worldly knowledge or worldly objects, because we get what we do not have, we fear that we will lose it also, because eventually we may lose it. Okay, either due to its own life cycle or because of loss. Then again, the next step about what is Atma. Okay, this is again a repetition, sorry. The next step about what is Atma and what is, again as a background, is it starts with what we know. And we know, and it moves from gross to subtle. This is where Sthula Sukshma Karana, this 9-point shloka number 9.2 is addressed. So with all this background, now the teaching is coming to actual thing of going from gross to subtle with what we already know or what we already have. So a common thing as a seeker for all of us is we are very much aware of our physical body. So the Vedanta addresses and starts with Atma in terms of Sthula Sharira. Because immediately if we say Atma is none of everything else, then we will get confused. All right. So the idea is to go from gross to subtle, and the wonderful example given is how the couple are the husband shows the wife Arundhati star, starting from the moon, which is very gross, visible, and then the Venus, which is a bright star, and going all the way, because Arundhati star is, though it's a twinkle, it is not as bright as the rest of the stars. So going from gross to subtle, it starts with the gross body. And remember, this is Atma Anatma Viveka, isn't it? So we have to be shown, the teaching shows why we are not the gross body. And the foundation for this is Tattva Viveka. What is Tattva Viveka saying? Atma alone is real, everything else is unreal, isn't it? That is Tattva Viveka. Now, why is gross body unreal? We have to go behind all these prakriyas that the teaching gives, Vedantic teaching gives. And there are many prakriyas, but 4 prominent ones. Drit Drishya Viveka, which is the distinction between subject and object, or seer and seen. Like what I think Kanaka already described, subject and object, and even Ganeshanji asked the question, right? Then Nitya Anitya Viveka. All right, that is also there. Nitya, that means that which is constant and that which is changing. We have to identify that which is constant and that which is changing. Then Chetana Jada, inert and enlivened. Okay, conscious and inert matter. Distinction between conscious and inert matter. Then Atma Anatma Viveka. Now there is other also, Shariratraya or Panchakosha Viveka. We can keep adding. But here it is important to distinguish that there is one thing constant. We are not physically separating Anatma from Atma. We are not physically separating Jada from Chetana. We are not physically separating Anitya from Nitya. Or we are not physically separating Drik from Drishya. What is the separation? Separation is got by proper understanding. It is a logical separation. Okay. We cannot remove our physical body to find our Atma. Okay, and the beauty of Vedanta is to build the understanding while we are with the objects and gross and subtle. And then logically keep separating and say this. So if we apply the first yardstick, Drik Drishya Viveka, let us take it as subject and object. Is the body subject or object? It is object. It is subject when in relation to viewing gross objects, right? Now, as gross body, we have to think of it as senses. Now, body itself becomes an object because the mind knows how the senses are operating. So actually, body is the subject. Body is the object. It behaves as a pseudo-subject temporarily. It's a temporary subject for transaction purposes. We should not consider it as reality. It is an unreal thing. Temporarily, it can take the role of the subject. And because it is the object, it is unreal. We are not the object, right? So anything that we experience is the object. Anything that we experience is the object. So we experience the body, therefore we are not the body. Then we apply Nitya Anitya Viveka to the body. Is the body constant or changing? We know it is changing. When we were born, we were small. Now we are growing, we have grown, and then we have aches and pains. Okay, we know the body keeps changing. Health keeps fluctuating. So the body constantly keeps changing. The cells keep getting replaced. Old cells die, new cells come in, hair gets gray. Okay. So when we apply Nitya Anitya Viveka to the body, we know the body is changing, therefore we are not the body. Then if we apply Chetana Jada Viveka, that means consciousness and matter Viveka. Is the body inert or is it conscious? Is the body inert or conscious? Who is conscious?
Body is inert. And,
the witness is temporarily the mind is conscious. Temporarily the mind takes the role of being conscious, but the real conscious entity is Atma. Okay. When the mind becomes an object, then the intellect becomes the subject. Okay. Then the mind becomes actually a mind becomes an object and it becomes inert. Then intellect becomes inert when the witness becomes the subject. So the body is actually Jada. We can say it is Jada because it is borrowed consciousness from the witness or Atma. So when we apply Chetana Jada Viveka to the body, we know that the body is inert, therefore we are not the body. Atma Anatma Viveka. Okay. So, or we say Atma is the witness that is constant. Body or the objects are anatmas, separate from it. So, the body is not myself. Body is not Atma.
I am not the body.
I am not the body. Okay. And the teaching very clearly says this is not a physical separation. It is a logical separation. That means we are not cutting the body to find out the Atma. We are only logically separating the body and saying because through subject-object discrimination, through real-unreal discrimination, through changing-unchanging discrimination, through consciousness and inert element discrimination, we are logically separating Atma from Anatma.
See, all, whether it's object, body, mind, intellect, they are all relatively subject or object.
Correct.
Whereas Atma is all the time the subject.
Correct.
It is never the object.
Wonderful. Yes. Perfect. See, this is the beauty, right? Now, please see the teaching is only addressed the Sthula Sharira. The same logic can be applied to Karana Sharira or Sukshma Sharira also. If you see, then in day 6 talk and day 7 talk, it'll get addressed. So we will wait for the next. The teaching is addressing only the gross body here in day 5 talk. Right? So next question, like Tattva Viveka, what is the benefit? What is the benefit of Atma Anatma Viveka? Why should we engage in this hair-splitting discussion or, sadhana, logical discrimination, separation? What is the benefit? Anyone? The beauty is that which I am seeking, I already am. What is Day 5 saying? We are all beggars in one way, even when we have come to the spiritual, till we get into the Vedantic path, we are begging for something or the other. Even if we are not begging for riches, money, or objects, we are begging for happiness because we are always constantly searching for happiness. Isn't it? Now, when we understand this Atmanatma Viveka, we realize that which I am seeking, I already am. Bliss, self is the nature of, bliss is the nature of the self only. So I am complete. I don't chase bliss. I am bliss. Isn't it? That is the benefit of this Atma Anatma Viveka. So we don't chase happiness either in terms of objects or in terms of experience. So when we don't chase happiness, that means what? I am already happiness. Who wants happiness? The one who is unhappy only wants happiness. Now, if we don't chase happiness, I'm already happy. That means I am happiness. If I am happiness, what does it mean? I am Ananda. What does it mean, Ananda? I am Brahman. So I am complete. This is why the teaching is saying this is the supreme benefit of Atma Anatma Viveka. In Tattva Viveka, understanding Satya and Mithya, suffering ceases. In understanding that I am Atma, logically separating Atma from Anatma, I realize that which I am chasing all my life.
I am that.
I am already that. That's all.
So summarized day 5, day 4, and day 5.
Yeah. Thank
This
you.
is my understanding going to the talks. You can also get back in the WhatsApp group. Of course, it is time. And this is mentioned in the talk, by the way. Bliss, what? Okay, all of this. Remember, we are saying all of us are beggars. Even if we are searching for happiness, we are begging for happiness. Because we feel we don't have happiness. And Vedanta is saying it's not that you don't have or you have happiness. You are happiness.
But we have to recognize.
That which is already there, we have to recognize.
Okay.
That is the self-knowledge aspect that both of you, all of you outlined, even including Sajni outlined. That self-knowledge is a recognition of that which we already have. And the recognition is very important. Why? Because it's like a beggar sitting on a huge amount of wealth underground and begging for 10 rupees, 100 rupees. And finally, he does not know that he's sitting on the wealth. When they dig up after he dies, they find a huge box of gold and rubies and all that. So knowing is good. I mean, having is good, but more important than having is knowing what we have, recognizing what we have. Okay, so this is my understanding. I don't know if it's late. I don't know if Sajni and Purnima are there. So
I am here.
okay.
But
any questions, Sajni? Anything?
I'm here, Vasuji.
Any questions?
No,
Anything?
you covered the whole thing very well. both for day 4 and day 5. However, I feel that we need to start earlier because, to have dinner so late
Yeah.
is a little difficult.
Okay.
10
Understand.
o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we
Yeah. I
start
think
a
we have
little
we have to we have to we have to make sure we have to close at 9:30 maximum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Any sharing anything else that you want to share, Purnima? Anything?
No,
that
no,
want
you
to
are very, very thorough, Vasuji. Everything, I mean, down to the last detail was covered. So, really fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, if there is nothing, we will close with the prayer. And as we are actually, the whole world is reeling with the pandemic, under the pandemic, and India is also subject to the second wave, which is causing a lot of havoc. Let us also chant Mahamrityunjaya mantra 3 times along with the Shanti mantra. Sajni, would you start with Asatoma Sadgamaya as we normally do?
Okay. Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you, Sajni, for that wonderful prayer. All of us know the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. Let us chant it 3 times along with the prayer of Lokaha Samastaha, and then with a humble offering to Adi Shankara and the lineage from Dakshinamurti, entire lineage, to Tattva Bodha, the teaching provided by Adi Shankara, and to Sri Prabhuji for actually providing us as a guru, to provide us with the wonderful, simple interpretation of the teaching of day 4 and day 5. With this humble offering, let us chant Mahamrityunjaya mantra 3 times and Lokaha Samastaha 3 times and close this session. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityurmukshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityurmukshiyamamritat. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityurmukshiyamamritat. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ तत्सत् ब्रह्मार्पणमस्तु।